Evolution by natural selection is a scientific theory that is directly observable and backed up by fact time and time again. However, many people still misunderstand how natural selection works and repeatedly make arguments that miss their target. Here's a creationist claim we can examine. Mathematically, it is inconceivable that anything as complex as a protein, let alone a living cell or human, could spring up by chance. This creationist argument is an example of a straw man fallacy. Straw men are common because people fixate on the random mutations that result in differences or variation between individuals. Looking at this statement, we can agree that complex proteins and organisms cannot have risen by chance alone. But scientists do not claim that natural selection is a chance process. It is actually a non-random process which sorts through random variation. It refines the more useful ones and prunes away the harmful ones. We can think of natural selection in terms of four postulates. First, random mutations generate variation, causing new alleles and traits to arise in the population. For example, we have people with blue and brown, black and green eyes. These traits are all coded for by different alleles, or versions of genes. Secondly, these variable traits are heritable. The last two steps determine what variants will make it through to the next generation. These steps are largely non-random and are disregarded by the strawman view. Selective pressures allow individuals with traits that enable them to use resources more effectively or adjust to environmental conditions to survive and reproduce. These useful traits persist and develop while less beneficial traits disappear. What we end up with is a whole lot of organisms adapted to their context due to non-random, non-directional natural selection without having to rely upon chance. Let's consider an example, the evolution of eyes. A random mutation in early organisms would have given rise to light-sensing spots. These allowed the organisms to decipher between light and dark so they could avoid damaging UV rays, which increases their survival and reproductive rates. Over time, the ability to sense one's surroundings became increasingly advantageous as predators and prey became more mobile. Simple eyes, which included photoreceptors and pigment cells, were selected for, like the ones we find in planarians. Eventually, cells that created even more complexity, such as concave eyes and lenses and cornea, were selected for. Genes for highly developed eyes were passed down generations and enabled organisms to find food and escape predators. Today we see diverse eye types, including compound eyes, mirror eyes, and lens eyes, independently evolve multiple times. Animals from jellyfish to cephalopods to vertebrae all have converged on more complex eyes because of natural selection. Scientists do not see natural selection as a random process. Randomness does have a part to play, as it generates the variation we need for natural selection. But selective pressures that enable successful variants to persist and increase complexity are entirely non-random and capable of producing a diverse and complex life forms which we see today. You can now imagine how a mutation that confers even the slightest advantage could be translated into a new trait over time. Traits as complex as cells, organs, and systems that make up a human. Non-random selection transcends calculations of chance and makes the complexity we see a whole lot more understandable. There's no need to be bothered by the straw man in the field.